Activated.
Analyzing.
Update complete.
When we last discussed the Bird of Prey, we talked about how it was iconic to the Klingon Empire. While the Bird of Prey would be iconic, the D7 would be the ship known for its power and strength, especially during the original series era. Looking at the original series and what would be a rising theme for the show, executives would be so cheap that they would try to make the D7 be every class of ship that the specific episode needed, versus building more models. We would see the D7s be used in a more multi-purpose role than specifically the juggernaut it would become known for. It would be used anywhere from a prison ship to a scout ship and ultimately to a battle cruiser. Now, there are a few theories here on why this happened, the first being that the D7, being a successor to the D5, was tested in multiple different roles to see its best fit. It could also be another nod to the stagnation and decay of the Klingon Empire that we see prevalent in both the original series, The Next Generation, and even Deep Space Nine. As I've discussed before, instead of the Klingons consistently innovating, the Empire would just continue to make one ship fit multiple roles. Another theory for why this is, one I'm much more apt to believe, is that the Empire, during Discovery in the original series era, did not necessarily believe in scout ships. They had the Bird of Prey, of course, but would also send out D7s as scouts, when really, a D7 was more powerful and larger than what we would think of a conventional scout ship. And additionally on this theory, the Birds of Prey weren't always used as scout ships. In fact, they rarely were. They would be warships along with the D7s. And honestly, this would fit the cultural belief of power and force by the Klingon Empire when you think about it. The Klingon Empire was more focused on war than innovation. In 2255, during the Klingon Federation War, not that one, nor that one, but this one, the D7 would have a decidedly different look than what we would come to know. They would look like
No, I'm sorry, they lied. CBS lied. I won't play along like this is okay to do to the fan base. I have a contract with CBS. Just don't hurt my family.
In 2255, the D7s would be used as a frontline battle cruiser as well as prison barges. As I consistently note, the D7s would be extremely powerful in the match of even the most advanced Starfleet ship during this era. With the cloaking device, the invisibility screens, as cloaking devices wouldn't be discovered yet and still be a complete surprise in the future. With the invisibility screens, the D7s would be an unstoppable juggernaut against Starfleet. Okay, let's pause here a moment. I've already gotten my little jab at CBS out of the way for the invisibility screen, so let's have some real talk. It's no secret that I don't respect Discovery. Mainly because the writers and producers don't respect the audience, or Trek, or others who have different ideas from them. But, let me say this. While I've mocked the idea of cloaking technology in Discovery, upon doing some research, I think there may be an explanation that gives somewhat of a good reason that this happened. An explanation that could loosely make sense. It's outside the scope of this video, but stay tuned for a future episode trying to make sense of it, and it'll be coming soon, within the next couple of weeks, don't worry. So with that out of the way, let's just get back into the D7 itself. Throughout Klingon history, especially early history, the Klingons would generally keep the same designs and keep the same chassis and just change out the tech on that chassis. And I know I've stated that a couple of times, but it does show the mentality of the Klingon Empire. And it's not without some merit. The Klingon Empire was in a resource-starved area of the galaxy, but also in an arms race with the Federation. So not designing newer ships and just making the old ones work would make sense. And of course, this arms race would be prevalent mostly in the 22nd and early 23rd centuries, which is why it makes no sense that we see the complete redesign of the D7s in Discovery. I mean, it's basically a different ship. However, we would ultimately see the design the D7s would become most known for in the mid to late 23rd century, and the design would hold until it would be retired sometime in the mid to late 24th century. Now, as I've stated already, the D7s would be the backbone of the Klingon Defense Force. These ships were so powerful that it is stated that a D7 would be a large threat to a Constitution-class vessel. Though, ultimately, a Constitution would be able to destroy a D7 one-on-one, but it would be at great cost. While the D7s became somewhat antiquated eventually, they were used by the Empire extensively, which included the first battle of Deep Space Nine. It would only be when the Klingon Empire faced off against the Dominion that the model would ultimately fall out of favor and be replaced by the Vorcha and Negvar classes. While some have described the design of the D7 as predatory, I'd more call it bulky. The ship has a spread-wing primary hull which connects to a long neck that would lead to what effectively resembles a ball. Now, Memory Alpha calls it a head-like structure, but I think it's a ball. The head, or ball-like structure, would be the bridge. And let me say, man, when fighting this ship, I wonder where I'm going to be targeting at. Like Starfleet vessels, the bridge of the ship was modified depending on the era and which government controlled the ship. Generally, though, the bridge of a D7 appeared to be cramped, with the commander in the middle, facing a view screen, and the officers and vital systems would of course surround him, both to his sides and behind him. Romulan variant D7s were adorned with a bird of prey design on the hull, similar to what we see in the Romulan variant bird of preys, though other D7s would have yellow and red detailing. Again, from what I can tell, this was also a part of the Romulan design. As discussed, the bulk of the ship was located to the aft. Now below this aft section, jutting out similar to how wings jut out on a Klingon bird of prey, would be two warp nacelles. The ship's impulse engines are located on the caudal section of the ship, and yes, that's how you say it, caudal. At least that's what YouTube just told me about 2 minutes ago. So you learned something today, congratulations. You know, trying to figure out what that word was has really taken it out of me, so I'm gonna take a second to relax. Alright, I feel better. Looking at the weapons, the vessel would have two nacelle-mounted disruptor cannons, a forward-mounted phaser emitter, and a forward launcher capable of firing photon torpedoes, magnetic pulses, and disruptor blasts. Something that we would see throughout the Klingon designs, at least during the original series era, is that most Klingon ships' weapons only fire in forward arcs. This would require the Klingons to face their enemies, or at least charge them, and it's perhaps reflective of the culture at the time. And yes, I do know that we see some fights that counter this in both Enterprise and Discovery, but that is why I pointed it out in the original series, and I honestly think it was in the Next Generation as well. The D7 also tested experimental weapons, including the projected stasis field. This was a beam that disabled any ship within its radius. The beam was fired from the ship in forward, left, and right firing arcs from the head itself. Unfortunately, the weapon would not only disable any enemy ship, but also the D7 itself, so the weapon was really useless in most combat scenarios. The propulsion of the D7 would be an S-Graph unit, which, from everything I can tell, effectively is just a warp core. It's just the Klingon version of it. And I actually do like that they did this. It makes the different species in the universe effectively have the same thing, but they get there in different ways, which makes sense. Technology would evolve in different ways, but effectively do the same thing. Though I couldn't find a top warp speed for the class, we do know that the D7 would be able to catch up to any vessel that was going warp 9, so I'm guessing that this would mean it could at least obtain warp 9.1, on the TOS scale of course, and would be able to get up to at least warp 7 or warp 8 in both TNG and Deep Space Nine. In the TNG scale at that point, of course. I mean, it's obvious, but I guess I have to say it because someone in comments is going to get upset if I don't. The vessel would also have tractor beams, food synthesizers, and quarters, which I know is just amazingly surprising to everyone. Oh, and it had a conference room that had a triangle-shaped table with the Klingon Empire insignia on it. Though I doubt this was actually on the Romulan variants, though, I mean, you never know. We don't see that they don't have this, so maybe they did. For those who want to be on Jeopardy, the two ships we know that were commissioned in this class was the IKS Growth and the IKS Klothos. According to Memory Alpha, the D7 appeared in the original series 3 times, the original series remastered 4 times, so one more ship in remastered, the animated series 4 times, no true D7 appeared in Discovery. Okay, yes, it appeared once in Discovery if we include that abomination. It appears 5 times in both TNG and Deep Space Nine, and Voyager has it 3 times. As I've discussed before, I'm going to be talking about the Romulan D7 variant and the Klingon cloaking device in a future episode, and it's coming up very, very quickly, so definitely stay tuned. The D7 would leave a lasting impression and be a favorite of many who would watch the original series, but what are your guys' thoughts? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to rate and subscribe, and guys, I'm going to see you on the next Lore Reloaded.